The grand hall of the Hegemony Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Massive pillars of crystal supported a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Hundreds of alien dignitaries filled the chamber, their strange bodies creating a sea of colors and shapes that would have amazed anyone seeing it for the first time. But Timon had seen it many times before. He stood quietly in his simple black suit, watching the aliens talk and laugh among themselves. Timon was a human trade negotiator. For 3 years, he had traveled to different worlds, trying to secure deals for humanity. His people needed rare minerals that could only be found on certain planets controlled by the hegemony. Without these minerals, human colonies would struggle to grow. Without them, human ships would fly slower than their alien competitors. Everything depended on these negotiations. The aliens did not make it easy. Most of them saw humans as newcomers, barely worth their time. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, after winning a brutal war against pirates who threatened the hegemony border world. The victory had earned them a seat at the table, but not respect. To most aliens, humans were still primitives who got lucky. Lord Victor was the worst of them all. The Baron stood nearly 9 feet tall, his blue-gray skin covered in elaborate markings that showed his noble status. His species, the Velcassians, had ruled this sector of space for thousands of years. They valued tradition above all else. They valued eloquence and grand speeches. They believed that the quality of one's words determined one's worth. The formal banquet began as the sun set on the horizon. Servants brought out dishes from 100 different worlds. Timon ate carefully, trying not to offend anyone by refusing food. He smiled politely as aliens made jokes he did not fully understand. He waited for his chance to speak with Lord Vector about the mining rights humanity so desperately needed. That chance came in the worst possible way. Lord Vector stood suddenly, his voice booming across the hall. Honored guests, I must share something amusing with you all. The conversations died down. Everyone turned to look at the powerful Baron. Our newest members, the humans, have sent another negotiator to beg for our resources. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Timon felt his face grow warm, but he kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with insults before. This one is named Timon, Vector continued, gesturing toward him with one long arm. He comes from a world where they still use chemical fuels for some of their vehicles, where they still argue about how to govern themselves, where they still fight wars over invisible lines on maps. More laughter. And yet he sits at our table, hoping to mine crystals that his people barely understand. Timon stood slowly. Protocol demanded he respond, but not with anger. Lord Vector speaks truly. We are young compared to most species here, but the young often have the most to learn and the most determination to grow. He kept his voice calm and respectful. We hope that wisdom might guide youth, as it has across the galaxy for millennia. Some aliens nodded approvingly at his measured response. But Vector was not finished. His eyes gleamed with something cruel. Wisdom guiding youth. Yes, how poetic. He clapped his hands twice. That reminds me. I have a gift for you, human. A gesture of goodwill between our peoples. 2 servants appeared from a side entrance. Between them walked a young female Velcassian. She wore a heavy veil that covered most of her face, and robes that seemed too large for her frame. She moved carefully, her head bowed low. The servants guided her toward Timon's table. This is Hannah, Vector announced. My youngest daughter. She has been unfortunate since birth, unable to speak, a defect in an otherwise noble bloodline. He said the words as if describing a broken tool. In my culture, such defective children bring shame to their houses. They cannot participate in our grand debates. They cannot recite the poetry of our ancestors. They are, essentially worthless. The hall had gone completely quiet. Aliens leaned forward, sensing drama. But humans, Vector continued, are known for taking in broken things, for valuing even the smallest and weakest among them. Or so I hear from your propaganda broadcasts. His tone made it clear what he thought of such ideas. So I offer her to you, Teeman of Earth. Take my defective daughter. Perhaps your primitive culture will find use for her. Consider it my gift to humanity. The other aliens began to laugh. Some covered their mouths in mock shock. Others whispered to their neighbors. Everyone understood what was happening. This was not a gift. It was an insult of the highest order. Vector was calling humans garbage collectors, willing to accept what civilized species threw away. If Teeman refused, he would look cruel, rejecting a helpless girl. If he accepted, he would confirm that humans were indeed beneath the other races. Teeman looked at Hannah. She stood perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her. Through the thin veil, he could see her eyes. They were watching him carefully. There was intelligence in those eyes. And something else. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just curiosity about what this human would do. He made his decision in an instant. Teeman walked around his table and approached Hannah. He stopped a respectful distance away and bowed deeply, the way humans showed respect to equals. Lady Hannah, he said clearly, so everyone could hear. I would be honored if you would accept my hospitality and friendship. Not as a gift, but as a guest. You will have your own quarters, your own freedom, and my complete respect. He turned to face Victor. Lord Victor, I accept your offer, but not in the spirit you intended. Where I come from, we believe every person has value. Every person deserves dignity. If your culture cannot see Lady Hannah's worth, then perhaps she will be better appreciated among humans. The hall erupted in chaos. Some aliens gasped in shock. Others laughed even harder at what they saw as human stupidity. Victor's face darkened with anger, but he could not take back his offer now, not in front of everyone. Teeman extended his hand to Hannah, palm up, letting her choose. She stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she placed her small hand in his dot as they walked out of the grand hall together. Teeman heard the laughter and whispers behind them. Let them laugh, he thought. They would see soon enough what humans were capable of. Not through weapons or technology, but through something the aliens seemed to have forgotten. Simple kindness. The human diplomatic quarters were small compared to the grand estates of alien nobles, but they were comfortable. Teeman led Hannah through the entrance, very aware that she had not made a single sound since they left the banquet hall. Her hand had slipped from his as soon as they were away from watching eyes. Ji-Wan, Teeman's assistant, looked up from her desk in surprise. She was a young woman, barely 25, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. Sir, I heard what happened at the banquet. Is this really? This is Lady Hannah, Teeman said firmly. She will be staying with us. Please prepare the guest suite. Make sure she has everything she needs. Privacy, especially. Ji-Wan's surprise faded quickly. She had worked with Teeman long enough to trust his judgment. Of course. Right away, she stood and smiled warmly at Hannah. Welcome, Lady Hannah. I am Ji-Wan. I hope we can be friends. Hannah looked at Ji-Wan carefully, then gave a small nod. It was the first real acknowledgement she had made since leaving the hall. An hour later, Hannah was settled in her own room. It had a large window overlooking the alien city, a comfortable bed, and most importantly, a door that locked from the inside. Teeman had made sure of that. He left her alone to rest, telling her through the door that she was free to move about whenever she wished. The next morning, Teeman found a note slipped under his door. The handwriting was elegant, written in perfect Galactic Common script. Thank you for your kindness. I have been alone for so long. May I join you for breakfast? He smiled and immediately sent a response through the intercom system, knowing she could hear him, but might not be ready to come out yet. Please do. You are always welcome. When Hannah appeared, she had removed the heavy veil. Her face was delicate, with the same blue-gray skin as her father, but softer features. Her eyes were a deep purple color, unusual even for her species. She sat across from Timon at the small dining table, moving with careful grace. G1 brought food, and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Hannah pulled out a small electronic tablet. She typed quickly and turned it to face Timon. I can write in 7 languages. I have studied galactic history, mathematics, and art. My father made sure I was educated, even though he considered me worthless. Timon read the words carefully. Your father is a fool, he said simply. Education and intelligence are worth more than a voice. Hannah's eyes widened slightly. She typed again. No one has ever said that before. In my culture, those who cannot speak are considered incomplete. We value verbal eloquence above all else. The greatest honor is to give a speech that moves thousands. Then your culture is missing out on many valuable people, Timon replied. He pulled out his own tablet. On Earth, we have had many brilliant individuals who communicated in different ways. Some wrote instead of spoke. Some used hand gestures. Some used technology. We learned that intelligence and worth are not tied to a single form of communication. Over the following days, a routine developed. Hannah would write questions, and Timon would answer them. She wanted to know everything about Earth, about human history, human wars, human achievements. She was particularly fascinated by how humans had overcome their own limitations. Your species cannot fly naturally, yet you build ships that cross the galaxy, she wrote one afternoon. You are physically weaker than most species, yet you won a war against superior forces. How? Timon thought about his answer carefully. We adapt. When we face a problem, we do not simply accept it. We find another way around it. If we cannot be stronger, we become smarter. If we cannot be faster, we become more patient. And most importantly, we work together. We do not abandon our people just because they are different. Hannah stared at those words for a long time. Ji-Wan had started spending time with Hannah as well. She discovered that Hannah loved music, even though she could not sing. They would sit together in the evening, listening to recordings from different worlds. Hannah's face would light up during certain melodies, and she would move her hands in rhythm to the sounds. One evening, Ji-Wan had an idea. Hannah, have you ever tried learning sign language? She demonstrated a few simple signs, spelling out words with her hands. Hannah's eyes went wide. She grabbed her tablet. What is this? I have never seen such a thing. It is how humans who cannot hear or speak can communicate, Ji-Wan explained. It is a complete language, just using hands instead of voice. It is not considered lesser. It is just different. Hannah learned the basics of human sign language within a week. Her hands flew through the gestures with increasing confidence. For the first time in her life, she could have a real-time conversation without stopping to write. Tears streamed down her face the first time she successfully signed a complete thought to Ji-Wan. But there were darker moments, too. Late one night, Timon heard a sound from Hannah's room. Not words, but a soft, broken noise. He knocked gently. Hannah? Are you all right? The door opened. Hannah's face was wet with tears. She handed him her tablet. I was not born mute. When I was young, I spoke like any child. But something happened. Something terrible. I stopped speaking after that. My father said I was choosing to be defective. He said I was bringing shame on purpose. Eventually, I believed him. Timon felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice gentle. You experienced trauma. That is not a choice. That is not your fault. My father said if I truly wanted to speak, I would simply do it, she wrote. He said I was weak. Your father is wrong, Tiemann said firmly. On Earth, we understand that the mind can be injured just like the body. We have doctors who help with such injuries. Would you like to speak with one? Only if you want to. No pressure. Hannah looked uncertain, but eventually nodded. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing outside their small haven. Lord Victor sent messages demanding updates on his daughter. Other alien nobles were watching the situation with great interest. Some found it entertaining. Others were disturbed by the implications. If a defective Velkashin could thrive among humans, what did that say about their own treatment of similar individuals? Tiemann's negotiations for the mining rights had completely stalled. Vector refused to meet with him, claiming that the human had insulted him by accepting Hana. Other Velkashin nobles followed their baron's lead. It seemed that Tiemann's act of kindness had destroyed any chance of success, but Tiemann did not regret his choice. Every morning he saw Hana growing more confident. She explored the city with Ji-won, always staying close to her new friend. She started learning to cook human food, delighting in the new flavors. She laughed silently at jokes, her whole body shaking with mirth. 1 month after she arrived, Hana wrote something new on her tablet. She showed it to Tiemann during breakfast, her hands trembling slightly. I want to try to speak again. Not for my father, not for honor or tradition, for myself. Because I want to. Can you help me? Tiemann smiled and nodded. We will help you. But remember, Hana, whether you speak or not, whether you succeed or not, your worth does not change. You are valuable exactly as you are. Hana signed back in human gestures, tears in her eyes again. Thank you. No one ever said I was enough before. Then everyone before was blind, Tiemann replied simply. Outside, the galaxy continued to watch and whisper. But inside the small human quarters, something remarkable was beginning to grow. Not just hope for one person, but the seeds of something that would eventually shake the foundations of the hegemony itself. Dr. Minho arrived from Earth 3 weeks later. He was an older man, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a calm presence that immediately put people at ease. Tiemann had requested him specifically. Minho specialized in trauma therapy, and more importantly, he treated every patient with deep respect. Hana was nervous about the first meeting. She stood by the window in the conference room, her hands clasped tightly together. Ji-won stood beside her, offering silent support. When Minho entered, he did not rush forward or speak loudly. He simply bowed in the human way, showing respect. Then he pulled out a tablet and typed a message, showing it to Hana. Hello, Hana. I am Dr. Minho. I am here only if you want me to be. You are in complete control. We move at your pace, and we stop whenever you wish. Is that acceptable? Hana's shoulders relaxed slightly. She nodded and pulled out her own tablet. Yes, thank you. The first few sessions involved no discussion of speaking at all. Minho simply talked with Hana through written messages about her interests. They discussed art and music. They talked about the differences between human and Velkashin culture. They played simple games to build trust. In the third session, Minho finally asked about her past. Can you tell me about when you stopped speaking? Only if you are comfortable. Hana's fingers hovered over her tablet for a long time. Finally, she began to type. The story came out in pieces, painful and slow. She had been 6 years old in human years. Her mother had died suddenly, and her father had remarried quickly to maintain his political position. The new wife did not want children from the previous marriage around. Hana had tried to tell her father what was happening when he was not there. The isolation, the cruelty, the constant message that she was unwanted, But Vel-Kashan culture valued strength and eloquence. When Hannah had tried to explain, her words had come out broken and confused, as they often do with traumatized children. Her father had told her to speak properly, or not speak at all, to stop bringing drama and shame to the household, to be stronger, so she had stopped speaking entirely. It had been easier than trying and failing, safer than speaking and being punished for it. Over time, her father had decided her silence was a physical defect rather than an emotional response. It was easier for him that way. He could blame nature instead of his own failures as a parent. Minho read her story carefully. When he finished, he typed his response. Hannah, what happened to you was not your fault. Your father failed you. Your stepmother failed you. You were a child who needed protection and received cruelty instead. Your silence was your mind protecting you the only way it could. Hannah stared at those words. New tears fell down her face, but these were different from before. These were tears of relief. Can I be fixed? She typed. Minho shook his head and typed back. You are not broken. You adapted to survive an impossible situation. Now we will help you feel safe enough that you do not need that protection anymore. But whether you speak again or not, you were never broken. You were strong. The therapy continued over the following months. Minho used various techniques he had developed over decades of practice. He taught Hannah breathing exercises. He helped her understand her own trauma responses. Most importantly, he helped her see that she had agency over her own life now. Meanwhile, Hannah met Sora, a human engineer who worked at the embassy. Sora was energetic and passionate about her work, and she treated Hannah like a friend from the first moment they met. She showed Hannah the human workshop where they repaired and modified their equipment. This is a disabled ship engine, Sora explained one day, pointing to a massive piece of machinery. It cannot work the way it was originally designed because a critical component failed. But watch this. She activated several modifications she had made. The engine hummed to life, running on a completely different system. We humans are good at finding new ways to make things work. If one path is blocked, we build a different path. Hannah signed in human gestures. Is that what you are doing with me? Building a different path? No, Sora said with a grin. You are building your own path. We are just giving you the tools. One afternoon, Sora introduced Hannah to human music therapy. They sat together with various instruments spread out around them. You do not need to sing to make music, Sora explained. Feel the vibrations. Express yourself however feels right. Hannah picked up a drum and hit it cautiously. The sound resonated through her body. She hit it again, harder. Then again. Soon she was creating rhythms, her face focused and intense. When she finally stopped, she was breathing hard and smiling. She signed to Sora. I have never felt so free. But not everything was peaceful. Lord Victor had been sending increasingly aggressive messages to the human embassy. He demanded his daughter's return. He claimed the humans were brainwashing her. He threatened to block all trade negotiations permanently unless Hannah was handed back to him immediately. Ambassador Kyung, the senior human diplomat on the planet, called a meeting with Timin. Kyung was a stern woman in her 50s, practical and experienced. Timin, I support what you have done. But this situation is becoming a political crisis. Vector is putting pressure on the entire Hegemony Council. Some species are supporting him, saying we have no right to interfere in their cultural practices. Hannah is not a cultural practice, Timin said firmly. She is a person. She has the right to choose where she lives. I agree, Kyung said. But we need to be prepared for consequences. This could destroy our trade negotiations. It could damage human relations with multiple species. Are you prepared for that? Timin looked out the window at the alien city. Somewhere out there, Hana was probably with Jiwon or Sora, learning and growing and becoming more herself every day. Yes, he said simply. Some things are more important than trade deals. Kyung nodded slowly. Then we will stand with you. But Hana needs to know what is happening. She needs to make her own choice about what comes next. That evening, Timin sat down with Hana and explained everything. He showed her the messages from her father. He explained the political pressure. He made sure she understood the situation completely. You can return to your father if you wish, he typed on his tablet. We will not stop you. Or you can stay with us. But if you stay, there will be consequences. Your father is threatening war. Other species may turn against humanity. We want you to make this choice with full knowledge. Hana read everything carefully. Her hands shook slightly as she typed her response. My father does not want me back because he cares about me. He wants me back because I am making him look bad. His defective daughter is thriving with humans, and that hurts his pride. She paused and continued typing. I want to stay. But more than that, I want to speak. Not to prove anything to him. Not to fulfill some cultural expectation. But because I am ready. Dr. Minho says I am ready. And I want my father to hear my voice and know that humans gave me something he never could. What is that? Timin asked. Hana smiled as she typed. The freedom to be myself. The next morning, Dr. Minho announced that Hana had made a breakthrough. In private session, she had managed to speak a single word. Her voice was rough and uncertain from years of disuse, but it was there. With practice and continued therapy, she would be able to speak again. But Hana did not want to speak in private. She had a different plan, one that was risky and brave and completely her own choice. I want to speak before the Hegemony Council, she wrote. I want to tell them what happened to me. I want other people like me to know they are not alone. I want to change things. Timin read her words with a mixture of pride and concern. That will be dangerous. Your father will try to stop you. Hana met his eyes steadily and signed. Then let him try. The request to address the Hegemony Council caused an uproar that echoed across the galaxy. Lord Vector responded within hours, demanding an immediate emergency session. He claimed that humans had violated his daughter, turned her against her own people, and were now using her as a political weapon. The council had no choice but to respond. They scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks later. The subject would be simple but explosive. Whether humans had the right to harbor Hana against her father's wishes, and whether she had been coerced or manipulated. Those 2 weeks were the most intensive. Hana's life. Dr. Minho worked with her every day, helping her strengthen her voice and build confidence in using it. Her vocal cords were weak from years of disuse, and speaking took enormous effort. But she practiced constantly, determined to be ready. Jiwon helped her prepare what she would say. They went through her testimony again and again, making sure every word was clear and truthful. Hana wrote out her entire speech first, then slowly practiced saying each sentence aloud. Her voice was rough and quiet, but it was hers. And with each passing day, it grew stronger. Or it helped in a different way. She designed a small device that would amplify Hana's voice without distorting it. You should not have to strain to be heard, Sora explained. This will help carry your words to everyone in the chamber. Security became a major concern. Ambassador Kyung received intelligence that Vector was planning something, though the exact nature was unclear. She assigned human guards to protect Hana at all times. The guards were not soldiers, but diplomatic security, trained to protect without escalating situations. 5 days before the hearing, there was an attempted kidnapping. 3 Velkashian agents tried to grab Hana as she walked with Jiwon through the human district. The human guards reacted instantly, surrounding Hana and getting her to safety. The agents were captured by local authorities, but they claimed they were acting independently. No one believed them. Hannah was shaken but not deterred. That evening, she spoke aloud for the first time in front of Timon. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and the words came slowly, but they were unmistakable. I will not anymore. Timon felt pride swell in his chest. No, you will not. You are the bravest person I have ever met. Word of Hannah's recovery spread quickly, despite attempts to keep it quiet. Suddenly, the hearing was about much more than one person. Representatives from dozens of species announced they would attend. Some came to support traditional noble rights. Others came because they had similar practices in their own cultures and wanted to see how this would play out. A few came because they were genuinely curious about what one person might say. The human delegation prepared carefully. Ambassador Kyung would speak first, establishing the legal framework for human involvement. Timon would explain the timeline of events and the care provided to Hannah. Dr. Mino would testify about trauma and recovery, providing scientific context for what had happened. But the weight of everything rested on Hannah herself. She would have to stand before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and tell her truth. The night before the hearing, Hannah could not sleep. She sat by her window, looking out at the alien city. Jiwan found her there in the early morning hours. Are you afraid? Jiwan asked quietly. Sitting beside her friend Hannah was silent for a moment. Then she spoke aloud. The words came slowly, but clearly. Yes, very afraid, but also ready. For too long. I was silent. Not anymore. Jiwan took her hand and squeezed it gently. You are not alone. We will all be there with you. The morning of the hearing arrived. The grand hall was packed with representatives from across the hegemony. News feeds from 100 worlds were broadcasting the event live. This had become the most watched proceeding in recent memory. Hannah wore simple clothes, not the elaborate robes of Velkashan nobility. She had refused to dress in her father's colors. Instead, she wore a blue dress that Jiwan had helped her choose, something that represented herself rather than her house. Lord Vector arrived with an enormous entourage of nobles and lawyers. He looked more imposing than ever, his markings freshly enhanced, his bearing proud and angry. When he saw Hannah enter with the human delegation, his eyes narrowed with fury. The council arbiter called the session to order. The arbiter was an ancient being from a species called the Halanari, older than most civilizations in the room. They were known for their impartiality and wisdom. The arbiter's voice was like wind through leaves, strange but clear. We gather to address a matter of individual rights versus cultural tradition. Lord Vector of the Velkashans has demanded the return of his daughter, Hannah. The humans claim she has sought asylum of her own free will. We will hear from both sides and render judgment. Lord Vector spoke first. His voice was powerful, filling the chamber with eloquence and passion. He painted humans as manipulative primitives who had taken advantage of his daughter's disability. He claimed they had brainwashed her, turned her against her own people, and were now parading her as a trophy to embarrass the Velkashan people. My daughter is defective, he declared. She cannot speak, cannot participate in our culture, cannot fulfill the duties of her station. The humans knew this. They took her precisely because she was vulnerable. They have violated the sacred bond between parent and child. They have interfered in matters that are not their concern. He demanded her immediate return and reparations for the insult to his honor. Many of the alien representatives nodded along with his words. Traditional noble rights were important to maintaining order in the hegemony. If humans could simply take children from powerful families, where would it end? Then it was the human delegation's turn. Ambassador Kyung spoke with calm authority, establishing that Hana had never been a prisoner, that she had been given complete freedom, and that all medical care had been voluntary and with her consent. Timan described the banquet where Hana had been offered as an insult. He explained the kindness and respect she had been shown, the friendship she had formed, the growth he had witnessed. He made it clear that every choice had been hers. Dr. Mino provided clinical testimony about trauma, selective mutism, and the recovery process. He explained how emotional abuse could manifest as physical symptoms. He made it clear that Hana's silence had been a response to her environment, not a permanent defect. Throughout all of this, Hana sat quietly. She wore Sora's voice amplification device. Her hands were folded in her lap, but she was not trembling. She was waiting. Finally, the Arbiter turned to her. "Lady Hana, you have heard your father's testimony and the human's defense. Do you wish to speak?" The entire chamber went silent. Lord Victor leaned forward, a sneer on his face. He believed she could not speak. He believed this was all human manipulation. Hana stood slowly. She walked to the center of the chamber, where everyone could see her. She looked at her father across the space. Then she looked at Timan and smiled slightly. When she opened her mouth, every being in the hall held their breath. Her voice was quiet, even with amplification. It was rough and uncertain, but every word was clear, spoken in perfect high Velcashian, the language of nobles and poetry. "My name is Hana, and I have a story to tell." The chamber exploded with shocked voices. Lord Victor jumped to his feet, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "Impossible. She cannot speak. This is a trick." The Arbiter raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. "Let her speak. That is why we are here." Hana took a deep breath and continued. And with each word, her voice grew stronger. Hana's voice filled the grand hall, carried by technology, but powered by pure determination. She did not rush. She spoke slowly and clearly, making sure every word landed with the weight it deserved. "I was not always silent. When I was a child, I spoke. I laughed. I sang the songs of my people." She paused, gathering strength. "Then my mother died. My father remarried, and my world became very small." Lord Victor tried to interrupt. "This is a lie. I provided everything for her." "She was defective from silence," the Arbiter commanded. "You will have your chance to respond. Let her finish." Hana continued, her voice gaining confidence. "My stepmother did not want me. She made that clear. In many ways. When I tried to tell my father, he said I was bringing drama. He said I should be ... stronger. He said if I could not speak properly, I should not speak at all." She looked directly at her father now. "So I stopped. It was easier than being punished for trying." The chamber was completely silent now. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward, hanging on every word. "My father told everyone I was born defective. It was simpler ... than admitting ... He had failed me. Year after year, I stayed silent. Because silence was ... safe. Because no one wanted to hear me anyway." Tears ran down her face, but her voice did not waver. "I was educated because it looked good. But I was also hidden away. A shame, a defect. Something to be ... discarded." She turned to face the full assembly now. "Then my father decided to use me one final time, to insult the humans, to prove that his culture ... was superior. He gave me away. Like garbage. Lord Victor was shaking with rage, but the Arbiter's hand remained raised. He could not speak yet, but something happened that my father did not expect. The human Teeman treated me with dignity. He gave me my own space, my own choices. He asked me what I wanted. Hannah's voice grew stronger still. The humans showed me something I had never seen. A place where my silence did not define me, where I was valuable, exactly as I was. She gestured toward the human delegation. Dr. Mino taught me that trauma is not weakness. Jiwan showed me that friendship crosses all boundaries. Sora proved that humans turn obstacles into opportunities. And Teeman gave me the greatest gift, the freedom to choose my own path. Now she looked at her father again, and her voice became firm despite its roughness. My father says, I was brainwashed, but I ask you, which is brainwashing? To tell someone they are worthless until they believe it, or to show someone they have worth until they remember it? The question hung in the air. Many representatives shifted uncomfortably. I learned to speak again, not because humans forced me, but because they made me feel safe enough to try. Because for the first time in many years, I wanted to use my voice. She paused, then spoke her next words with perfect clarity. And now I will never be silent again. The chamber erupted. Some aliens cheered. Others argued loudly. Lord Victor was shouting, but his words were lost in the chaos. The Arbiter had to call for order multiple times. When silence finally fell, Hana spoke again. I formally request asylum with humanity, not because I hate my own people, but because I need to be somewhere I can heal, somewhere I can grow, somewhere I am not defective, but simply myself. She turned to the Arbiter. I also request to speak about others like me, others who are discarded or hidden because they do not fit the image of perfection. Her voice was passionate now. How many children across this galaxy are called defective? How many are abandoned? How many could thrive if given the chance? The Arbiter studied her carefully. Those are larger questions, Lady Anna. Today we must decide your fate specifically. Then let me be the example, Hannah said. Let the galaxy see what can happen when someone is given a chance. Lord Victor finally got his chance to respond. He stood, his voice booming with fury. She is confused, manipulated. The humans have filled her head with their primitive ideas about worth and dignity. In our culture, we have standards. We have traditions that have lasted thousands of years. And what have those traditions given me? Hannah asked quietly. What did they give the dozens of others in your house alone who were hidden away? What did they give to all the children who learned that love is conditional? Victor had no answer that would not condemn him further. The Arbiter conferred with the other council members for what felt like hours. The entire galaxy watched and waited. Finally, the ancient being spoke. We have considered all testimony. We have observed Lady Hana speak with her own voice, clearly and without coercion. We have heard her history and her wishes. The Arbiter paused. The council rules in favor of Lady Hana. her asylum request is granted. She is free to remain with humanity. The chamber exploded again with reactions. But the Arbiter was not finished. Furthermore, we recognize that this case has revealed uncomfortable truths about practices across many member species. Lady Hannah has raised questions we cannot ignore. Therefore, we establish a Commission on Individual Rights, tasked with investigating the treatment of those deemed defective or disabled across all hegemony worlds. This caused even more chaos. Many representatives were outraged, but others, those who had been moved by Hannah's testimony, began to voice their support. Lord Victor stood frozen, defeated. His attempt to humiliate humanity had instead exposed his own cruelty. His political rivals would use this against him. His power was broken, but Hannah felt no satisfaction in his downfall. She felt only relief and exhaustion. As the chamber continued its debates, Timon came to her side. "You did it," he said quietly. "You changed everything." Hannah smiled tiredly. "We did it, together." In the months that followed, the galaxy began to shift. The Commission on Individual Rights started its work, investigating countless worlds. Other individuals came forward with their own stories of being discarded or hidden. Reform movements began on dozens of planets. Lord Victor was removed from his position by his own people, who decided he had brought too much shame to their culture. Ironically, he had become the very thing he had accused Hannah of being. Humanity's reputation transformed almost overnight. Where they had been seen as primitive upstarts, they were now viewed as moral innovators. Other species sought partnerships with humans, wanting to learn their methods of inclusion and adaptation. The mining rights Timon had originally sought were granted without further negotiation, along with dozens of other trade agreements. But the real change was quieter and more personal. Across the galaxy, parents looked at their children differently. Teachers reconsidered their students. Communities began to question traditions that excluded rather than included. Hannah became an ambassador, traveling to different worlds and speaking about rights and dignity. Her voice, once stolen, became a tool for change. She spoke at universities and government chambers. She met with families struggling with similar issues. Everywhere she went, she carried the message that had saved her. Every person has worth, regardless of how they communicate or what they can do. Jiwan became her permanent assistant and closest friend. Sora continued designing technology to help people communicate in different ways. Dr. Mino trained other therapists in his methods, spreading the human approach to trauma care across multiple species. And Timon continued his work as a negotiator, but with a new reputation. He was the human who had chosen kindness over politics, who had seen value where others saw garbage, who had helped change the course of galactic history with one simple act of respect. 5 years after that fateful banquet, Hannah stood before the Hegemony Council again. But this time, she was there to present something she had spent years developing, the Declaration of Individual Sovereignty. Her voice was strong now, confident and clear. No one in the galaxy doubted her right to speak anymore. "We propose a new framework," she announced. "One that recognizes the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of their abilities or differences. One that protects the vulnerable rather than discarding them. One that sees diversity not as a weakness, but as a strength." The declaration was debated for months. Not every species agreed immediately. Change never comes easily. But slowly, steadily, the ideas took root. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that humans had always known. But the galaxy was just learning. Every voice matters. Every person has worth. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is help someone else find their strength. Hannah looked out at the stars from her quarters that night, thinking about how far she had come. From the silent, hidden daughter to a voice that echoed across the galaxy. From someone told she was worthless to someone who was helping redefine worth itself. Teeman joined her at the window. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that only exists between people who understand each other completely. "Do you ever regret it?" Teeman asked. "Speaking out? The responsibility that came with it?" Hannah smiled. "Every day is hard. Every speech takes effort. Every meeting is exhausting." She looked at him with those deep purple eyes. "But I would not trade it for anything, because I am free, and I am helping others become free too." "The galaxy is better for your voice," Teeman said simply. "The galaxy is better for your kindness," Hannah replied. "You saw me when others looked away. You chose compassion when cruelty would have been easier. You showed me that humans are not just another species. You are something special." Teeman shook his head. "We are just people trying to do what is right." "Exactly," Hannah said. "That is what makes you special. In a galaxy full of ancient civilizations and advanced technology and complicated politics, humans remember something simple. Kindness matters. Dignity matters. Every person matters." She paused, then added, "That is why humanity will change everything. Not through weapons or conquest, but through showing others a better way." And she was right. Humanity's influence continued to grow, not through force, but through example. They became known as the species that lifted others up, that found value in unexpected places, that refused to abandon anyone. The story of the Baron's mute daughter and the human who treated her with respect became legend. It was taught in schools across hundreds of worlds. It became a symbol of what was possible when compassion triumphed over tradition, when kindness proved stronger than cruelty. But for Hannah and Teeman, it was not a legend. It was simply their life, their friendship, their shared mission to make the galaxy a little better than they found it. And every day, in small ways and large, they succeeded. Her voice, once locked away by fear and trauma, now sang out across the stars. And the galaxy listened.